Honestly, if my girl sat on my face before I left, I would be 100% stronger.
Are men becoming pansies? Are they becoming soft?
Every generation's done this, right? We're getting soft. My dad can be like an electrician. He knows how to fix a car. I don't know any of that stuff. Does that make me less manly? Maybe it does.
1944, a man's man was storming the beaches of Normandy. Today, people are storming the beaches of their couch to play Call of Duty.
If the men of that era had the opportunity to storm their couch and to play Call of Duty, they would be sitting there right next to those other kids.
What the average man could bench press 30 years ago versus today. 30 years ago was 240 pounds versus today 187 pounds.
Ain't nobody benching 240 pounds. I'll just say that flat out.
And then you have now millennials looking at Gen Z saying, oh, Gen Z is this, because everyone has the tendency to romanticize the past.
At my age, I don't understand why these kids have anxiety. They have nothing to have anxiety about. They don't think it's real, but it's real.
Now you guys know why I lick my lips during the podcast so much.
Load up on some joy mode so I can feel a little bit more manly about this show today.
Yeah.
Don't want to be soft. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think there's actually joy mode all over this table.
Is it that stuff that,
I think that's what I was trying to sweep off of here because I just made another mess. And so like I probably did that earlier.
The funny thing is I'm using this shit because on our last podcast, I see some comments from a few people that are like, Nsima looks like he's off cycle.
Uh-oh.
Which is why I'm wearing a hoodie.
You want people to think that you're on juice?
Well, if I look a certain way and then suddenly I look smaller, that's gonna hit my soul. It's gonna hurt my soul. You know what I mean? So now I'm wearing a hoodie because I need to just hide myself from everyone.
What would the natty professor say if he was here?
The natty professor would say, go hop on some trend, bro. That's what you need. But okay, let me explain something. I think actually this falls in line with this podcast pretty well. And the fact is I'm a fragile human being, okay? In more ways than one. Apparently,
your heart's fragile.
My heart is fragile. Apparently, I can't operate without air conditioning. I will just slowly fade away into the abyss. Because when my air conditioner was broken, it was during the heat wave. So like at night, our room was like 90 degrees. And my 8 sleep and my Oura ring said that my heart rate was at 64 beats per minute when I was asleep. And I was waking up feeling like shit. And over that period, that 9 days of not having air conditioning, I went from 246 to 238. I've never been in the 230s since my early 20s.
Damn.
I haven't touched that. Like that was crazy.
There's no fucking when it's that hot either. So it's not like you lost a bunch of weight from that.
Yeah. But it's crazy.
It's too hot.
Yeah.
I hate to admit that sometimes there's too much of anything.
Because once you start sweating,
it happens.
Stop sweating.
Yeah. It gets too sweaty. Sweaty's not bad, but too sweaty. There's such a thing, I think.
Make your own lubricant with your own sweat. It's probably not sanitary, actually. Well, unless you're clean.
Yeah, if you're clean, but it's just like natural, right?
I mean, yeah. But like, yeah. If you have bad stuff on your skin, let's say you came back from jujitsu.
Yeah, no. God, no.
All fines. Yeah.
Dude, it's okay. So I've been rolling very, very light. And so on Monday, super light day, only got in like really like one legit like flow roll around and then some drilling. Like I typically will have a cover over my driver's seat, like a towel, just because it gets really nasty. And I was like, I barely even sweat. So I'm like, I'm not going to bother. Like you have to like, set it all up and, you're bending over trying to get the thing in there. It sounded weird. I was like, fuck it. I'm not going to do it. Yesterday I was driving my car. I was like, dude, what reeks in here? I was like, what is that? So I got like that matte jujitsu smell stuck on my seat now.
It's beautiful.
So I have to figure out how to get it out.
That's how it works.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Stuck in there forever now.
I hope not. Dude, that's what I'm afraid of. Damn cloth seats.
You might guys remember that guy Asmongold?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where I mean, this is peak masculinity. Let me tell you this, right?
Can't wait.
Asmongold made a video about how he doesn't shower every day. The longest amount of time he's gone without showering was about maybe, I think he said somewhere in the 20-something to 30-something days.
Wow. That's a lot, but I'm not surprised.
But let me also
trying to get those manly fumes.
But some of you might be thinking, can you pull up a picture of Asmongold, by the way, so people can...
People will be like, oh yeah, I'm not surprised.
No, but we also talked about Asmongold in the podcast past. Asmongold is wealthy. He's one of the most wealthy gaming YouTubers out there. He has like multiple businesses. He's smart. And he might still have a girlfriend, but he had a girlfriend when he was doing this, meaning that he must have still been getting some action while he was like 15 days in the cheese. You know what I mean? Like, that's masculine to just be like, hey, I don't care that I have this dick cheese. Come mess around with it. You're gonna get this cheese.
This guy who made the steak video, isn't it?
Yeah, the $2 steak. Yeah. So his reasoning too was like, you know, there's a certain threshold of smell. Like after you get past day 12, 13, you're not really gonna smell much worse. It just peaks, kind of like, you know, you rise.
I get that. Yeah.
It's just a solid smell.
know,
That's masculine, if you ask me.
There's like different levels though of like BO.
Like funk.
There's like just smelling like some armpit, you know, it's kind of a natural thing of like somebody, you know, worked out really hard and maybe their deodorant gave up on them. And that's just like whatever. You're just like, oh, it's just like a little whatever in the air. But then there's like that shit that smacks you in the face sometimes. And then there's like asshole smell. It's like someone put their asshole up to a fan.
Oh, that one's bad. Yeah.
You know that one?
Those people.
Yeah, the Gold's Gym.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, whoa. Like, and that's pretty offensive. You're like, man, like that's invading my space. Like
It's like a physical wall that you bump into.
Yeah. And I don't care. Like, you don't need to smell nice, but don't smell that bad like that. That's
Not just
gross.
that, but when those people smell that bad, their smell will stay where they have been after they leave. I know some of those people, and I've experienced that where it's like they come to an area, they're there for a bit, they leave, and hours later, you know where they were in the room. You go to the spot, you're like,
They were right here.
Joey was here.
Their stinky ass was right here.
You're right? You know. Oh. How do you tell somebody, man?
I mean, you know, there's like pheromones and stuff, and there's like we've had people come on the show and they talked about he's unleashing it now.
Uh-oh.
He's unleashing the fury. We've had people on the show talk about like endocrine disruptors. I wonder if there's like endocrine promoters. You know, if you smell your own nuts a little bit, I wonder if that's like if that's kind of good.
Oh, no.
That bleachy ball smell, if that's like, you know, kind of a nice thing. Maybe it makes you like hungry or like fucking go kick some more ass.
What if you smell the nuts of somebody that's stronger and has more testosterone?
Yeah. Maybe. Well, yeah. I don't know.
I mean, it makes the pack stronger if that's the case.
Maybe it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like literally, I'm being honest. Like maybe it does. I think this is a question for Andrew Huberman because he knows a lot about like the olfactory nerve and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have seen the videos of like the guys doing a lift. So, you know, they get their girl to come sit on their face. And I honestly, if my girl sat on my face before a lift, I would be 100% stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately. Pretty distracting. Like I'm gonna be over here for a little while.
But think about it. Like let's add a little bit of science to this. You know, when you get turned on by
there's a lot of stuff that just went in my head right now. So I'm gonna need a little bit of a break over here. Yeah.
That's okay. But you get all this blood flow.
I'm just thinking like you guys have facial hair. You know what I mean? So it's like stuff's gonna be sitting there for a little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Just leave it there all day.
I like it. I like to have a reminder.
Build up the testosterone a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Give your mom a little kiss on the cheek.
Well,
I wouldn't go that far. I wipe my face before I do that to my mother. Come on, Mark.
Oh,
No.
man. Kissing little babies and stuff. Like, oh, come on.
That's child abuse. That's horrible. Oh my goodness.
Flavor saver, right?
Yeah. That's why I keep this baby around.
Mm-hmm. Got it right there. Anytime you need it.
Now you guys know why I lick my lips during the podcast so much.
All right. We're going to listen to some stuff from Patrick Bet David. I thought this was an interesting conversation talking about, you know, maybe society's all going to hell and maybe today's young adult males, maybe they're not what they used to be. I don't know, but we'll get into some conversation on this. My brother's actually the one that sent this to me. I do think sometimes some of this can kind of sound like old guy stuff, you know, old guy complaining. Cause I think every generation's done this, right? We're getting soft. Oh man, we're getting soft. Like we don't even, you know, build our own homes anymore. Like we just buy homes that other people build. Like my grandfather built his house, you know? And so you think like every generation's going to have, conveniences, you know, and technologies and stuff. And
that's true.
My dad knows how to my dad knows about my dad can be like an electrician. He could be a fucking carpenter. He knows about plumbing. He knows how to fix a car. I don't know any of that stuff.
But you know who to call.
Yeah, exactly. I know who to pay for it or whatever. And there's, but does that make me less manly? Maybe it does. I don't know. Like, but let's get into it. Let's see what Patrick Bet David has to say here.
What is it to be a man's man today? I mean, I grew up wanting to be a man's man. That's what you wanted to be. But today it's toxic.
Why you want to be a man's man, though, Patrick?
Yeah, when you want to be a ladies' man?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't
want
think
to be
about
a
that.
man's man. Like what? I'm fucking around. I know what he means.
Okay.
I know
But I know when you said ladies' man, I was like, wait a second.
I want to be a man's man. I want the men. I like the guys. I want to be a man's man.
I actually felt pretty good. I think I think the goal, maybe a little higher. I think when someone says they want to be a man's man, I think it's like a dude that like everybody else wants to be around or be like, right? I think that's what they're saying. But I don't know. Maybe you want all the other guys to fuck you too. I don't know. That's not so bad.
Just want to hang out with the boys. Be with the boys.
Wrestle a little bit.
Just boys being boys.
Fucking grapple around.
Oil up a little bit.
Yeah.
Get some
Rough each
Greco.
other up.
Yeah. Just a little roughhousing, guys.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah, sweating together.
Spandex.
Right.
Masculinity, right? You're hearing it everywhere. People are being canceled for being a man's man. But the reality of it is, 1944, a man's man was storming the beaches of Normandy, and they knew most of them were going to lose their lives. But they're like, nope, I'm doing this because this is what men are supposed to do. Today, people are storming the beaches of their couch to play Call of Duty. 40, 50 years ago, without social media, we had to go learn how to pick up girls.
And I just think like if the men of that era had the opportunity to storm their couch and to play Call of Duty, they would be sitting there right next to those other kids playing the game, or they'd be online playing against them, right? Or with them.
Why storm Normandy?
Yeah, right?
I mean, I get it. That's to protect your country, and I respect individuals in the military, but at the same time,
there's also too much information now. Like, what are you fighting for? Like back then, I think you could kind of be brainwashed. We're going to fight for the USA, and we're going to go,
100%.
We're going to go and do this. And you're like, everyone got all fired up, and they're like, oh, if you want to fly a plane, you get paid an extra $30 a month. And everyone's like, pick me. I need the fucking $30.
Different times.
But now people are like, $30 or even $300 or even $3,000 or even $30,000 a month. If someone offered you that to fly a plane and go to war, nope. Maybe there's some people that would be into that, but not me.
No, as you say, I 100% agree. Like, there's no way.
And the funny thing is, like, you did mention the storming your couch to play Call of Duty, but like, if I could play Call of Duty and make money, I couldn't play Call of Duty and make money in 1940s. I had to storm the beach of Normandy. But like now you can make money doing, there's just so much opportunity where you're like, why risk my life?
There's so many more opportunities. And again, I think there's so much more information out there. So if we were to find out like that they really need to recruit a lot of people for a war, and some shit was really going down, right? By the time they like went to ask any one of the three of us, we would have like so much different information in our heads. We probably wouldn't even care to fight. We'd be like, no, I think this side actually has a pretty decent point, and I think this side actually has a decent point. I don't really want to kill anybody over it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
What would have to happen for you to like? It would have to take a lot for me. I don't want to. I don't certainly want to kill anybody.
It would have to happen, I think, right in our front yard, to where it's like, oh shit, this is actually going to like affect my family. Right? I think that's the only time any of us would be like, oh, wait a second, hold on. Now I'm going to fight you because you're in my area or you're in my like space or whatever, right?
And that's where like these conversations, they start. They're like, well, they did this during COVID and they told you to go back behind that line and you listened. And maybe that extends to like affect you and impact you like very, very directly at a certain point. And then, where do you draw the line kind of thing, which is probably sidetracking this topic, but interesting discussion nonetheless.
Let's keep moving.
Flirt and have lines and be rejected. Today, you just got to swipe right. Years ago, you had to learn how to hunt to get your food. Today, you just call Uber Eats. Lots changed. Are men becoming pansies? Are they becoming soft? Are we becoming passive? Like, oh my gosh, betas? Is that what's happening?
Pause for a second. Has Patrick Bet David ever hunted his food? I don't know.
Maybe. I feel like he's a guy who must have gone hunting with Cam Hanes or something.
Yeah, he probably has.
But consistently, I doubt it. I doubt it.
So, Nsima, this is a question for you because I missed this whole era and I'm
swiping?
Really, really grateful for it. But in your opinion, is it more difficult to find meaningful relationships these days with all the dating apps and stuff versus the times where those didn't exist?
Yeah, I think it's tough because everybody has different experiences on dating apps. And my experience on dating apps was kind of easy. And not everyone has that experience. Most people don't have that experience. But the amazing thing is now things like run clubs are getting super popular, right? So to answer your question first, I do think that dating apps for a lot of people probably do not lead to that. But a lot of people do. Like I swiped on Sam. You know, I knew Sam a little bit before, but then I saw her on Bumble.
Got it.
And then I was like, oh, she, you know, and then that actually sparked certain things, right? So, hey, and I love that girl. You know, probably gonna marry that girl. So, a lot of people have, but like it's one of those things where it's tough. But now, again, more physical. Like obviously, there's gyms, but these run clubs or whatever are actually for a lot of people turning into like dating apps because people are going out running, sweating. Most people aren't really running fast; they're just trying to go meet people. So it's pretty cool.
Pretty cool. I just know that like this was quite a while ago, but somebody a little bit older than me got divorced, and then they like the you know they got on these dating apps. Yeah. And he was actually complaining. He was like, dude, it's wild how horny these girls are at our ages. He's like, they don't want they don't want anything to actually do with
Was
me.
he in his late 30s, early 40s?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
so he was just like, he's like, it's not really that great. He's like, I thought it was gonna be awesome. He's like, but it's so easy. Like you don't even have to try. They just want to have sex with you and then they just like dump you. And I'm like, what is that all about? Like, it was just weird.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
So this was when I was previously married. So I was like, wow, that sounds pretty awesome, actually. And he's like, no, it's not. I promise. He's like, it's cool the first couple times. And then after that, it just gets so weird. I'm like,
There's a lot of technologies that change things. You know, like I would have never met my wife if it wasn't for the convenience of having an airplane. You know?
Right.
So like I moved to California and ended up meeting her in California. And so I think every generation, shit's going to be a little different. You're not just going to meet like the person that lived down the street from you or the person that went to your school, or you might not meet the person that your whole family already knows their family. You know, it's going to be, shit's going to continue to be different and change. And I think that the key is, as you age, I think the key is not to think that everything is like weird, wrong, or strange, but just to recognize that it's different.
Yeah.
You know, like you could still do the back in my day stuff, but it's just different. It doesn't have to be that necessarily that it was better.
All right, let's keep moving.
I got a bunch of data I want to talk to you about that has to do with what we bench pressed 30 years ago versus today's squat.
Yeah.
You know, our grip strength, bunch of different things that are influenced and meant to become softer. And for some of you that are watching this that completely disagree with my message, I would love to have you watch this message and post your commentary below at the end of the video.
Head of hair he has.
Yeah.
Right?
Jealous.
Important for us to look at some of the data to know if this is just gibberish or how are men really viewed and what kind of a life men live today. Before we get into it, I just want to give you some stats on, is there any relevance in men really struggling today? Like they can't find themselves. Are they really becoming softer or not? Scott Galloway wrote an article. The title was "The Most Dangerous Person in the World is a Young Man Who's Broke and Alone." Let me read some of the statistics that he has in this article. Men are more likely to use almost all types of illicit drugs at a higher rate than women. Thus, their higher prevalence of emergency room visits and inpatient substance abuse treatment. 93% of prison inmates are male, as are 98% of all death row inmates. Men are dramatically more likely to be homeless and for longer periods of time. Men now account for 41% of college enrollments, down from 60% in 1970. Men are twice as likely to overdose, 3.5 times more likely to commit suicide, and more than 9 times more likely to be incarcerated.
One thing that I'm thinking about is like some of the stuff that he's sharing. He's saying like men are 9 times more like, you know, likely to do this and so on. Is that just in comparison to women, or is that in comparison to men from like a long time ago? Because men have always done dangerous stuff. So and also a man doing something dangerous or courageous or even just dangerous, I think is like kind of part of being a man. You know, I think you kind of fall into that category. Like, you know, who messes themselves up with workouts pretty often, you know, like it's a lot of times it's a guy
who's going to be more likely to lift really heavy weights,
lift really heavy, run too far, run too fast, or do whatever, do jujitsu for way too many days in a row. There's girls that obviously push themselves physically, but they're smarter. Like they have like more
Caution.
more reserve when it comes to stuff like that. And so guys tend to kind of have their ego in the way, or, hey, everybody else was doing it this way, so I decided just to kind of follow along, and I ended up getting hurt. You see that a lot with men. So yeah, the comparison is probably to women, but I also would say that like we've kind of always been this way. The statistics when it comes to something like college or something, that's an interesting one, because like I think college and religion, and I think some of the things that we had in the past that were like tradition, I think they're falling apart.
100%.
You just see it, and even marriage, the idea of marriage, like everything is sort of, everything's sort of falling apart, and things are becoming different than the way they used to be.
The less enrollment in college thing, again, it's like, it doesn't surprise me too much, because even a lot of jobs are realizing that some people don't necessarily need 4-year degrees to do a specific job, along with there just being much more opportunity to do things without college. Many of our employees here aren't college graduates, but they're extremely good at what they do, and they continue learning. So it's one of those things where you're realizing that you don't maybe need to spend that much money and go into debt, right? So that like it's interesting, but you do see more women in college now than men when you do the comparison.
So that's what's going to mess with those percentages as well.
And I think that's what he starts to talk about next, is that like women are becoming stronger, and are women sort of becoming quote unquote stronger in our society than men, which is like an interesting question. But whoever said that would necessarily be a bad thing. Like we don't even, if we've never had it that way before, then we don't even know if that's a bad thing. Women haven't had the same opportunities. So now that they have the same opportunities, maybe it won't be so bad if they're really strong. But maybe people will think like our families will fall apart, because it's really nice to have the woman to be able to take care of the children, because I personally think that women do a better job of it.
Mm-hmm.
A recent study revealed that 9 out of 10 mass violent attackers were male, and more than 2/3 of them were under the age of 35.
Pause. That falls in like 9 out of 10 mass violent attackers. Well, men do more violent things in general.
They're better at being violent because they're stronger and bigger.
Yeah. Testosterone is
aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah. Put that into whatever gender, and that gender is going to be more violent.
Yeah.
Right.
Once again, the most dangerous person in the world is a broke and alone young male. Scott Galloway recommends 3 things. Start making money. We are living in a capitalist society. Get super strong. You want to be fit. You want to lift heavy weights and run long distances in your mind and in the gym. And last but not least, get out there, commit to meeting people, and quite frankly, try having sex. So interesting 3 points he makes, right? Start making money today, get super strong, and finally get out and commit to meeting people. But are we not stronger today than we were before? Let's take a look at some data to see.
Real quick though, those 3 things: make more money, get stronger, have more sex. Agree?
Yeah, sounds like a good idea. Go for it.
Yeah.
All right.
Men are stronger today than maybe 20 or 30 years ago. There's 3 things I want to look at. I want to look at our bench press to before, squat, as well as your grip strength. They say your grip strength is a strong predicator of mortality in later life. So are we stronger today or before? Here's what the numbers tell us. So they surveyed 1,800 lifters ages 20 to 39 to see what the average bench press was 30 years ago versus today. And here's what they came up with. What the average man could bench press 30 years ago versus today. 30 years ago was 240 pounds versus today 187 pounds. Squat was 277 versus today 225. So when you look at this data, how do you process it? Grip strength, bench, squat, like why are we looking at this data? Maybe, just maybe, they're trying to get women to become stronger and meant to become
Rewind
weaker.
it again, though. I want to hear those data points again, please. Because it's not just, play that again, yeah.
Years ago versus today. 30 years ago was 240 pounds versus today 187 pounds.
Okay, so 30 years ago. I'm just thinking about like 30 years ago, how many more people are, I don't know. But yeah.
Ain't nobody benching 240 pounds. I'll just say that flat out. That's heavy. That's a lot. So I don't care what era we're in. I don't think people are benching 240. If you survey a bunch of people that exercise,
1990,
and you're surveying people, then maybe. But I really wonder how I agree with a lot of what David is saying. I love his show. I'm a huge fan. But I think like in this case, I think it's just easier to think or to say, those old pictures of the dudes up on the bridge, like I think it's like the Brooklyn Bridge. Those are amazing pictures, but a lot of men fucking died doing that. It was super dangerous. You see people like up, on these scaffoldings that are a few 100 feet in the air, and they have like their lunch boxes with them, and they're like smoking a cigarette, and one false move, if you're too tired or whatever, right? So there's a lot of things from like our past. There's some things that you can look at and say, like, there was a lot of construction, there was a lot of manual labor, a lot of physical labor, and we don't do a lot of those things anymore. But when it comes to like lifting weights, I think lifting weights is way more popular now than it ever has been. And I would assume that people are stronger. Maybe they're not necessarily all that much stronger in like a bench squat or grip strength or something, but I just think people are way more health conscious. There's like way more numbers of Americans, especially, exercising than in the past.
Yeah, there's way more Americans exercising, but there's also like way more Americans that are overweight and obese. But there's also way more Americans than there was 30 years ago. That's why I was like thinking about this one, because I wonder kind of how the numbers were taken, right?
Yeah, dude, imagine if that was us up there fucking working on. A little windy today. Fucking A.
Yeah.
Quit being a sissy.
But one thing to think about here too is like 30 years ago, internet, not really there. Tech wasn't the way it is. People were more outside. People were probably interacting more. Now, like a lot of people, they'll when they're alone, they'll play a podcast or play something when they're feeling alone and they want to listen to other voices in the room. So they'll play videos of other people talking rather than going out and being with people, right? It's very different. So that's just interesting.
It's just wild to me when he was saying 30 years ago, what I see in my head, and then I hear you say like, 1990s. I'm like, oh shit, that was not that long ago.
Yeah,
I was hanging out in 30 years. Like,
it's just 30 years ago is like when Happy Gilmore came out. You know what I mean? Something like that, probably.
Yeah, but no, yeah. We can pull up a movie that came out and we'd be like, no, that's like 10 years old.
Exactly.
Kids born in the 2000s or 20 something. Ain't that shit wild?
That is. So, yep. All right.
COVID babies are walking.
240-pound bench versus 187.
Talking. And jumping. And beating Street Fighter.
Yep. You and your lady just had an awesome night. You got dinner or you just came back from the gym and it's time for that fun time. But you look down at your willy and, well, it's not working the way it should. Where's that blood flow? Well, that's where Joy Mode comes in. And I can read you these ingredients right off the bat because they're all natural ingredients: L-citrulline, arginine nitrate, Panax ginseng root, and vitamin C. The thing about Joy Mode is you just slip this baby into a little bit of water, drink it in 45 minutes later. When you're getting ready to go to the Pound Town, you will be ready to rock. And you know what I mean by rock. Joy Mode's really awesome because there's a lot of things that people promote as far as sexual wellness tools, but there's a lot of weird ingredients in there. These are all natural ingredients that's going to help your own production of blood flow. Stick it in some water. 60 minutes later, you're going to be able to stick it into something else. Joy Mode's your way to go. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at usejoymode.com/powerproject. And at checkout, enter promo code POWERPROJECT to save 20% off your entire order. Again, usejoymode.com/powerproject, promo code POWERPROJECT. Links in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Squat was 277 versus today 225. So when you look at this data,
fishy on the squat too.
Really?
It's a lot of weight, man. Like, amongst people that exercise regularly, maybe it's not that crazy, but I've been around people that work out for the last 30 years, and I don't really think that that's true. I mean, most of the time when I would work at like the slingshot booth and I would show people how to bench, almost every single time they lied about what they could lift.
Yeah.
100%.
They would always say 250. And I'm like, bro, 250 is impossible to get on the bar. It's so hard. You need to like a lot of math to figure that fucking thing out.
Yeah.
2.5s and shit. You never bench no 250. There's no way. I would actually ask him like, okay, what does 250 look like on the bar? And they'd go, what? And I'd be like, get out of here.
Yeah. I can say my max bench is 250, but Mark Bell loaded the bar.
There we go.
And I know this because he added the 2.5 plates because he's like, you're already at let's make it 250. I was like, all right, cool. Nailed it. Yep. Fucking straight down and up.
versus today 225. So when you look at this data, how do you process it? Grip strength, bench, squat, like, why are we looking at this data? Maybe, just maybe, they're trying to get women to become stronger and men to become weaker. Maybe I'm wrong. I will tell you, I don't.
Patrick just like put some fire behind the conspiracy theorists right now. Because I don't buy that shit. But a lot of people really believe it.
Well, in the last 30 years, I would say that there's probably a huge jump in how strong women are because more women are exercising and more women are getting into like, they are lifting some heavy ass weights. And you're seeing these girls with these thick butts and thick thighs.
And tiny shorts.
Bring up a bunch of videos of women with thick asses. Maybe not.
Yeah, well, like I don't know her name, but the one that lifted up that heavy ass sandbag.
Oh my God,
Janine! What? She's a friend of ours.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Wait, what?
I don't know. I thought that was funny. You pull her up right on your phone, right here.
Yep.
My bad. That wasn't as bad as it sounded, but it just was funny to me.
CrossFit too has had a huge impact on you know, women lifting heavier weights and Instagram and social media and all that stuff.
Yeah,
chicks need something to like post other than their actual just butts, so then they use the lifting kind of and mix in the butts. Right?
You know what? But you know what? Always like it's so interesting to me. Is like, okay, well, why is there a problem with women lifting weights? Some guys don't like women being masculine or whatever, but at the same time, when we think about this, like women that lift just will have better longevity. Think about these women when they're 60 and 70 and 80 and they have great bone density now and they're not going to be frail like, you know, the older men and older women from older generations that didn't work out. Like it's great that women are becoming more, literally more muscular.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
They'll be able to cook dinners longer for you. Is that what you were getting at?
Be able to wait on you hand and foot better. Yeah. Better stamina for that.
Who doesn't want that? You got a home gym at home. This
all their
an
chores
accident.
are done right when you walk in the door and your food's ready. 5 p.m. Boom, done.
But
there you go.
I mean, we're going to keep the video playing, but that's why, like, I don't know, when I see the comments from guys on women, but also when guys, let's just say like they really want like and I don't think it's bad to say that you want a super feminine woman with dainty hands but like when I look at that again, I just think longevity. I think like, she gonna be weak in 20 years.
I wonder if women, I have no idea what women like, but I wonder if women like for a guy to have some feminine characteristics here and there.
Oh, well, that's, for some women, that's like super popular these days. Like guys with some painted nails and like a little bit of, some women like the Harry Styles type of guy. But, you know, everybody has their preference. Some people do, some people don't. It's not a super general thing.
I know for myself personally, my wife, if she has some habits that are like, I guess some people would view more male-oriented, I dig it.
Yeah.
Like lifting weights and shit like that or mowing the lawn. Like, I think it's kind of cool. I think it's kind of sexy.
You don't have to do it.
Yeah. There's that too.
Yeah,
well, exactly.
I mean, because, you know, trends, they come around and they just, you know, they constantly repeat themselves. Everything repeats itself. I was wearing Jinko jeans in junior high, and that shit's back now.
Yeah.
What are Jinko jeans? Bring up a
They're just the fucking gigantic jeans that they just fucking drag everywhere.
Gen Z loves those.
I believe it was like in the 80s, like dudes were wearing makeup, long hair. They looked like chicks. And the girlier you looked, the more attractive you were to women.
Prince Slade.
Dude, all that shit, right? Yeah. So that's why it's like, yeah, I guess some people or some ladies dig it.
A lot of ladies dig it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know who Harry Styles is, though.
Look at Harry Styles. You'll see exactly what I mean.
Okay.
Harry Styles has like a lot of fans.
All right. Well,
and he's like,
he just
whoever's watching, look at Harry Styles. You see what I mean?
All right, let's go.
At our Vault conference, we had with a couple thousand people there, business owners, entrepreneurs. I challenge everybody to go do a certain questionnaire the first night, and the next they come and share their breakthrough with everybody. While I'm going through everyone, a lady sitting right here, like 7 rows right there, she gets up and she says, Patrick, I have to tell you my breakthrough last night. I said, what is it? She said, for the last 20 years, all I've been trying to do is compete against men to prove that I can make as much money as they make. I'm strong. I don't need them. I'm independent. I run a very successful salon. I do very well for myself. Everybody that works with me makes great money. I'm very, very, successful right now. To my friends, to my peers. I said, okay, and where are you going with this? What's wrong with that? She said, the breakthrough I have yesterday is men are not the enemy. I want a husband. I want to get married. I want to have a family. How interesting is that, right? The person she wanted to beat the entire time, now she wants to marry. How many endless videos can we see with women in their 60s who bought into the feminist movement to make men and women equal are sitting there saying, I regret making that decision because I'm single, never been married, don't have any kids, and I'm alone. And I wish I would have married men. I wish I would have had kids because I wouldn't have been alone today. Next point is a lack of male.
I mean, that's really cool, and it's a cool anecdote. But I think an interesting part about this is I see I've seen so many guys like talk about this topic and this idea. It's like, all these women are gonna regret this later, blah blah. Why are we even tripping over those women though? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, when we think about our decisions for our person, why do we care? Like, there's billions of women out there that aren't that person. It's like, if a woman wants to pursue a career and compete in the marketplace with whatever, it doesn't mean she's competing with men, just like be career focused, and that's not what you're interested in, then that's not what you're interested in. But the thing is now there's going to be a lot of women doing that. So why do we care?
There's also some people that are like, I don't know how to say this the right way, but there's some people that are like kind of in the middle in terms of their sexuality. And like being with another person is kind of complicated. It might be more simple for some of us, especially those of us that like want to pursue that. But there's some people that have been like rejected before or don't feel great in relationships. And they're just like, you know what? I'm just going to fucking do my own thing. This is like complicated. I have to worry about somebody else's feelings all the time. So it's not just, you just snap your fingers and you have somebody else. Like, it's not so simple for everybody. And I think people should just be cognizant of that. I don't think that, my brother was single for a really long time. And it was like, he was sort of just straightening himself out, trying to get himself headed in the right direction. And sometimes people don't, you have to feel pretty good about yourself. I mean, getting laid is one thing, right? But trying to find a significant other that you really love and care about, like, I just think the three of us are really fucking lucky.
Oh yeah.
That's the way I look at it. I'm just like, I mean, every day I'm kind of blown away by it to some capacity. Because I'm like, I don't know how this happened, but I ain't going to say nothing. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to ride this out. Hopefully Andy doesn't notice what a bum I am or how disgusting I am.
I think.
And I just stay the fuck out of her way. And I'm just going to, hopefully she doesn't notice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I took a picture of Stephanie yesterday and I was just blown away. I was just like staring at it. I was like, I cannot believe, like, I'm looking at the picture that this wanted to be with this. Like, that's fucking wild. Mm. But one thing I wanted to bring up was this is going to sound weird, but like the old algorithm. So I follow Patrick Bet-David. I follow people in his circle. And my feed, I'm totally open about it, is more on the side of what he's saying right now. Mm. I'm curious if my feed, his feed, those that agree with him all have the exact same feed where it's a bunch of people kind of saying like, like, oh, when she's 60, she's going to regret this. Or they have examples like there's that account, Women Posting L's, where it's like, I focused on my career for so long. Now I just want a husband. Like, am I really that bad of a potential wife or potential partner or whatever? I have never seen, and I'm not saying that because it doesn't exist, I have not seen the opposite side of somebody that disagrees with this. So I think the algorithm plays a heavy role in believing in this and for believing in that to be true. The other thing, which I think is, I don't know, a little, whatever. It's interesting and funny to me that he's making a video about weak men and then talking about how women choose to focus on themselves and their career. Because like, what's the other option to select one of these weak men, right? Because people in this frame of mind will say, I forgot what it is in Nsima, but like up to 27 years old, like they start to decline. So it's like, you're saying in your 20s.
Oh yeah, women like lose their value.
Yeah, the market value.
Yeah, right.
So you're saying a young woman in her 20s needs to pull the trigger on a dude, right? It's so early of an age without really even experiencing life herself. I think is like, it's kind of tough, right? And then you're saying, but a majority of the men are going to be weak anyway. So it's like, well, shoot, man. seems like her choices are pretty limited right now. Even though every guy would say that's fucking stupid, women have the most choices. But you get what I'm like the argument I'm trying to pose here.
Do you guys think it's a little easier to meet people when you're like not over 40? Like
when you're not over 40?
Yeah, like to meet kind of like the right person.
Oh,
I think that there's for those types of people, there's probably speed. You know, some people. You know, when you're over 40. At that point, depending on how old of a person you're looking for, maybe you're not really thinking of having kids. So maybe you then allow yourself to have time. I think when a lot of people get to their 30s and if they want kids, then they have a clock
is ticking.
But and again, I'm not in my 40s, but when you're in your 40s and let's just say you're not really interested in the kid thing anymore and you just want to meet people, I don't know, but I wouldn't expect it to be that difficult because there's a lot of 40-something-year-old singles, people that were divorced, people that just didn't. Yeah. There's tons.
I think it would be difficult because like what you just said, right? There's somebody walking around that's divorced. They could come with some baggage. It could come with some issues.
I just kind of think timing's pretty critical.
Yeah.
Like if I would have met my wife in high school, I wasn't developed enough to be the right person for her, you know? And if I would have met her any earlier, that probably would have been the case. Because I just wasn't I wasn't really doing much yet, you know? And so I think if people can meet people when they're young-ish or young for them, I think is probably like your best bet to really try to find someone that's awesome. But everyone's got different stories. Like I said, my brother, you know, he met someone and he's 52 or whatever the hell he is. So everyone's a little different.
Yeah. On the extreme side of it, well, I guess a little bit more than that is, you know, my he's single for the first time since, you know, early 20s or maybe even late teens. And he's 70, right? And he's like, I don't know, he said something where like, you know, you have one mother. If I get married, like I can have another wife, like I can have another one. You can't have another mother. And so I was like, oh, that's a weird thing to say. But, you know, I don't think he's like out there like seeking another woman. But if he was, like, that's an interesting, like, right? 70 years old and you're single all of a sudden. Like, I mean, I know that's an extreme, but like I would say that's pretty damn difficult.
I wanted to actually mention something off of what you were saying, Andrew, and like the algorithm thing. And it's just like, the thing is first off, algorithms are nefarious and they're not real. Like algorithms just straight up aren't real. You're getting shown the things that you are currently interested in and the things that you are agreeing with. And then Instagram realizes, oh, he likes more of that, right? Me? Sends me a bunch of ass. So, but let's think about it. But let's think about it because, like, you know, you have like, for example, a lot of the guys that are probably in the comments of this specific video are going to be a lot of, you know, those younger dudes who are like all super red pill, think that women only want 6-figure men and women are spoiled and this and that. But you go outside and you're not living in Miami, Florida. Women are normal. You just go outside and these aren't the women you're going to be interacting with. But because so many people spend so much of their time in online spaces and then they get fed these algorithms on their YouTube, on their TikTok, on their Instagram, because they're looking at all these same things on all of these platforms. They get fed all this same just shit of like, oh yeah, women are this and she's not going to be faithful. And then you just start to parrot it. Same thing with like, you know, politic, you know, shit. If you watch enough conservative shit, you will believe Michelle Obama was born a man, dude, and you'll fully believe it.
I gotta send it to you. I seen one today where now they have a picture of Kamala Harris next to a dude, and they have like the same facial features and shit. So now she's a dude. I meant to send it to you. I forgot, but it's so good. I'm like, oh, he's gonna love this one,
dog. It's just like, you know. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough for people. I like, that's why, you know, even for myself, you got to get the fuck out of your
almost every single time you see females talking like on a podcast, they're always talking about something sexual. Like, and that could be my feed, right? That could be my feed.
We know your feed.
Yeah, my feed, right? But but like you said, like you go out into the real world and it's like, all that's like dead. Like you still have to interact with people. You still have to communicate with people. So you might think like, oh man, this is like cool. Like all these women are horny. They're on the prowl. They're all fucking like, they're all seeking, you know, we're talking about these apps and stuff, right? And then you walk into a coffee shop and it's just like, It's just chill. It's just silent. You still have to like make a move or communicate to people if you want to get some action.
It's your first junior high dance all over again, where you're terrified to even look their way.
Just stand in the corner sipping on your espresso.
Yeah, man.
Espresso. All right. Lack of male role model.
Role models in a boy's life or a man's life. So if you look at some data here in 2019, some 15 million children in the United States were living with a single mother. That's about 5 times more than those living with a single father. As divorce rates rise and family courts continue to favor mothers, the amount of boys living without a dad will continue to grow. So why is this so important? Well, there are certain things I can tell my boys that my wife can't tell them, period. I can go tell my boys we're going outside and we're playing. They have to listen to it. I can go tell my boys you have to read 20 pages a day. They may tell Mom, I'm good. I don't need to read today. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. There's just certain things my dad could have told me that my mom couldn't tell me. There's a very, very big value that men have in a boy's life, but the more divorces we get and the more fatherless homes that we have, men don't know what it is to be a man's man. Matter of fact, let's look at a complete different angle. Most kids who go to school, most teachers are women. Most teachers are not men. So just recently I had my kids watch Captain, the documentary about Derek Jeter, and there's a scene in this documentary where Derek Jeter is drafted by the Yankees. His dream becomes a reality. He always wanted to be a shortstop for them because his dad was a shortstop. He goes, but he's not doing well. He's making errors. He's making mistakes. He's doing all this stuff, and he's having anxiety attacks. He's depressed almost, and he makes a phone call to his house. Mom's talking to Derek, and Mom says, son, why don't you just come home? The father says, when I heard my wife saying this to Jeter, he says, I told her, don't tell him that. He can't know that's an option. So now, let's replay this. Say the father's not in a picture. Say the mom's able to convince Derek Jeter to come home because no mother wants to see their son suffer. And she's witnessing her son Derek suffer. But the father says, that's what builds character. Let him go through it. If that doesn't happen, you don't have a 5-time World Series champion, few $100 million, one of the greatest Yankees of all time, 3,400 hits. If that simple call by the father wasn't made, you and I may not know who Derek Jeter is. So what's the point?
I mean, in general, I think we can just all agree that 2-parent households are better than a 1-parent household. You know, I mean, I also agree that a father, like I was in a single-parent household, and I can see what he's talking about there. Luckily, my mom also made sure that I had a lot of male role models to be in front of. She made sure of that because she realized that mine wasn't there. So she really tried to get me on teams. So I had coaches, and she put me in front of that. But there were things that I missed out on just because I didn't have that, right? So, I mean, he's totally right there.
Did she ever tell you that she did that on purpose, or?
Oh, when we talked about it, like when I was an adult, like she was like, yeah, I mean, I realized that I couldn't fill that role.
You had kind of a lot of energy. Too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So she's sort of like, I mean, not like you were.
She knew I had to do physical
completely
things.
Spazzing out, but she had to like have you do stuff. Otherwise, probably would have drove her nuts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I mean, he's totally right.
That's kind of a cool thing, though. I think when you do have a child, your child is like your teacher. Your child is like your mentor. You think it's the other way around, but like you were, just by the nature of like who you are and how much you wanted to move, it made your mom start to think of like other options, other things. Like if I get him involved in these things and I get him around other men, it'll probably be really good. And then once she did that, and once she saw the feedback from that, she's probably like, okay, I need to lean into that more.
She also made sure to like, because, so when some people hear about this, like when a kid hears this and like, oh, I don't have a dad, well, there's Bill Clinton. He didn't have a dad. The reason why I didn't know Bill Clinton had a dad is because my mom told me he didn't have a dad and he became president of the United States. She gave me a lot of people that, she just gave me examples of a lot of men who became great men without their father aware there. She wasn't saying that that's a good thing, but she was saying that you still have the ability to do great things even though you come from a single parent household. And the reason why I think that was so important for me is because I knew a lot of other kids that didn't have their father at home. But whenever they would talk about it, and I don't blame them for talking about it this way, but it was always like, oh, I don't have a dad. And I get it. It sucks. But like for them, it was like, this is going to make my life so much harder. And it does. But they didn't necessarily understand that things could still be okay, And it's not ideal, but things can still be okay.
Things are just so different coming from a dad. I'm just thinking of like, a hug from my mom, a hug or a kiss. Like I got so many of those, get them all the time. And it's not that my dad didn't do that, especially when I was like a baby. I'm sure he did it all the time. But as I got older, it's like that was like few and far between, probably more so from me than from him, you know, thinking about my kids and how like things have changed as they gotten older. I could still steal a hug here and there, but it's like I have to steal one, you know? Yeah. They're like, you're being weird. I'm like, no, get over here.
Yeah.
So, but it's different from a dad. And Andrew, you could probably almost think, you know, a couple times that where you really hugged your dad and gave him a good like embrace. And it probably was like when your son was born, when your mom died, like it's probably, you know, so when those things do happen with a dad figure, it can be more impactful. Obviously the stuff coming from mom is amazing and that makes you feel great. But because the dad doesn't really give you props as much, the dad doesn't maybe, you know, tell you flat out, I love you. I'm proud of you. You know, a lot of men just suffer from like their dad never said that, or it's just like not on their dad's radar. And there's a lot of friends I know that are extremely successful because they're still waiting for that. Like they want that to happen. They want their dad to come to them at some point and be like, hey, you made it. You're doing great. I'm proud of you. But it's probably not going to ever happen just because for that guy, he grew up in this kind of era that Patrick Bet-David is talking about of a time where we were manlier. And manlier men don't talk about their feelings. Like, I'm not going to go tell my son how much I love him because that's going to show a sign of weakness for me, because if I go do that, I'm going to probably break down. My son might break down. It's just going to be a big crybaby session. We're going to be a bunch of pussies about it.
Can't have that.
Right.
Yeah. I don't mean this in like a weird, sad, dark way, but like the next time my dad says like Andrew, I'm proud of you, will be the first time. But he has said it in other ways, right? Like his own way, because
shown it or whatever.
Shown it, yeah. Because I think if he were to say that, he probably would break down and cry. And you know, again, he's not supposed to cry, so it's funny. I mean, hopefully this doesn't sidetrack it too much, but you know the saying, like, you know, hard times create strong men create weak times. Everybody is currently saying right now that like this generation is the weak men, and then we're about to create the hard times. Man, I don't like this. Again, this is going to sound crazy, but it's almost like my dad's generation was the good times and the weak men created by the good times. Because I say that because of what you're just pointing out right there. Like, he's not able to express himself. And to me, that seems a little weak.
Yeah.
Right. And then so now because of that, we do have this weird time. So I don't think this generation is the weak men that's going to create the hard times. I think we're kind of in that hard time right now. Maybe it's the very beginning. Maybe it's just like a halfway hard time or whatever. But I think this, quote, hard time, which if we really step back, is not that freaking hard. But I think this hard time is going to create the strong men. And I think we are we're going to spearhead that strong men generation coming up, to where like my son will have like a pretty damn good time, and then we'll see what happens in that cycle, if that makes sense. I'm pretty sure it's really easy to make arguments against what I just said. But again, in my head, thinking about, you know, my dad's life, and everybody talks about this too, where it's like, oh, like my parents lived off of like $25,000 a year. They had a, you know, multi-level house, and it was one income, and they were just fine. Versus today, where it's like people have $100,000 job a year job, and they can't afford, you know, rent or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, they had it pretty freaking easy if you look at it that way, and we have it a little bit harder right now. And so I think right now is the hard time.
Yeah, I mean, things are just, again, I like to just use the word different, since said it's hard to make comparisons. But imagine being 15 years old and have these dating apps. You know, it's weird. And you're going to high school, like, and then you got social media. So there's just like a lot of stuff that I think could really sidetrack a person from what I think is important. I do think, like, if you go back to the beginning of what some of the stuff that he said about like just sort of trying to make something of yourself, I think that is in a really good interest of most men, because I think men can get really, and females too, but men can get really destroyed by relationships sometimes. And so I think it's a good idea as a male, if you can sort of make something of yourself and have some skill sets, that if you do fall on your ass and your girl does break up with you, you're not just a sopping mess, or you go to college and you fail. but you still have a skill set. You still know how to edit, or you love filming, or like you have something that you can do that makes you feel good about yourself, a sport, whatever it might be. So I think it's important to have some of those things. But I was listening to the guys today. They were chatting, some of our guys that edit and stuff, and I think Owen is teaching his brother some like editing stuff, and they were talking about like editing video games. And I was just thinking, like, this is kind of funny, in line with like what we're talking about today. You know, these guys are like talking about like editing, you know, video games, which is like a nerdy, kind of a nerdy conversation. They're not talking about like going and playing football or whatever, but these are active kids. You know, Spencer comes in here and he works out really hard. So just because people have like different jobs or they have different interests today, doesn't mean that they're weak by any means. It doesn't tell you the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
And along those lines, I do have a question for you guys. And Andrew, it falls in line with what you're saying in terms of the weak times, strong times, weak times, strong times.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, for example, it's an interesting general way to look at things. But at the same time, I don't know if we can just say population-wide, Gen Z is like this. Mm-hmm. Because the older generation looks at millennials and they say population-wide, millennials are like this. And then you have now millennials looking at Gen Z saying, oh, Gen Z is this. Because everyone has the tendency to romanticize the past. Mm-hmm. Everyone has the tendency to look at their youth and say, well, when I was younger, because those were their primes. And in your prime, you were in your probably physical prime. You were doing a lot of things that you're probably not doing now when you're older. And that's when the times were good for you. And now when you're older and you're not in your prime, and now the younger people are coming up, well, look at these younger people. When I was younger, blah, blah, because everyone just wants to romanticize the past. Because I know that, for example, your dad's generation, when you said like, you know, there was a good times, whatever, there were many strong people, millions of strong people that came out of that generation. Mm-hmm. How can we say that that was a generation of weak? Because I understand maybe there's wars during certain times, but many strong people, many strong business owners, many leaders came out of there, right? Just like many leaders are coming out of Gen Z. There's this guy, Hamza, right? And all these other young YouTubers. Hamza has hundreds of thousands of young 16, 17-year-old young kids that are following him, building businesses, you know? And it's one of those things where it's like, I personally have a hard time buying into like, oh yeah, well, there's this cycle, right? Mm-hmm. Because everybody, it's like my time was the best. I want to have a serious conversation with you about your balls. And I'm being serious here. On this podcast, we talked about a lot of things to help men improve the health of their penis because it's important. And your balls have very thin skin. This is true. You can touch them right now and you know it's pretty thin. Women do a lot of things to take care of their vaginal health. And men, we don't really think about the things that we put right directly on our balls, like our boxers. A lot of popular brands out there have chemicals that are literally touching your balls. Think about this. When you're in the gym sweating, when you're at work sitting, when you're doing all these things could be permeating into your scrotum. Things like BPA, phthalates, pesticides, insecticides, toxic dyes, toxic fertilizers, formaldehyde, all of which could lead to and could exacerbate lower testosterone, erectile dysfunction, and potential infertility. That's why I've partnered with NADS. And NADS is made with 100% organic cotton and no toxic dyes. So instead of putting just anything on your manhood, it's a good idea to get your hands on some NADS. And Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at nadsunder.com. That's NADS under.com. And at checkout, enter promo code PowerProject to save 15% off your entire order. Again, that's at nadsunder.com. Links in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
I think when we're talking about young men, I think we need to figure out like what age, you know? Because if you're talking about like kids that are still like teenagers, it's kind of unfair to call them weak because they're not really developed yet. Like we don't really know what they're going to really turn into. And it's easy for us to think, oh yeah, when I was a kid, I was a badass. I was really good at this sport or that sport. And you kind of forget though how much development and how long all that took.
How shitty you were at.
Oh my God. Like I remember playing baseball and like I was pretty scared to like be in the batter's box, you know, and my oldest brother, he was, you know, he was more aggressive and, you know, he really went after it. So it took me a long time, even in football, it took me a long time to get, you know, good at it because I just didn't have this super aggressive nature, but it's really easy to like romanticize those times. But again, back to the idea of got to kind of define the age. And I think if we're talking about, you know, kids that are like 13 to 19, like they just haven't really had a chance to do much yet. If we're going to bracket it up and talk about from like 19 to 35, that age group might have a harder time nowadays, or a difficult time, challenging time of like figuring out what they're going to do of like their career. Because when my dad was a kid, you just basically you went to college, and from college, then you got a job. And it was like it was a huge system, right? Mm-hmm. And that system sucks, I think.
Yeah.
You go to school, and then you go to more school, and then you can get like this job. And that was if you were a white male, back, in those times and stuff. And it wasn't equal for everybody, and women didn't have opportunities and stuff. And I think we're moving to I think we're moving to better spots, but that age bracket of people being like kind of lost, sort of trying to figure out what they're doing. I think that age bracket has expanded. Mm-hmm. I think it used to be like, 18 when you graduate high school to like 25, 26. Now I think it goes from 18 to like 35 or so, where people might just still not have landed their actual thing that they like doing, and they haven't really hit the income that they want quite yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even though that that literal like railroad track to the American dream was pretty crappy, it worked though. Mm-hmm. That's why there were so many people. So many people just believe in like, no, you go to school, you go to college, you get a career, and you do everything else. But everything is so different now. And so that kind of goes more in line with what I was saying about like the easier time, because it's like, it's just a matter of fact. You show up, you put in time, you get the thing that you want. Now you show up, you put in time, you get debt. Mm-hmm. You're screwed, so it's not a guaranteed thing anymore. So yeah, I don't, does that mean I think it was easier back then.
But let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. Think about this too. You show up, first off, you have an idea of what success looks like back then. A success is graduating college in 4 years, where I've only spent $15,000 or $10,000, and then getting this job that will allow me to pay for a house for $40,000. and then I get to just go off into the sunset and retire at 65, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Whereas nowadays, yeah, you might be going into debt, but there's so many other possibilities that can make you money. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I think once more people start to think out of the box, then you have fucking 18-year-olds that are fucking making six figures already because they've learned how to do certain things online. And it's not just making money creating content. There's many ways to make money. Mm-hmm. Like, again, we have an editor that's 22 years old that there's tons of possibility. Mm-hmm. And I think that, yeah, in some ways it's harder, but as far as opportunity, it's actually it's not as step by step.
Yeah.
But if you think out of the box, if you start to pay attention to what other people are doing, and you don't buy into the standard idea of this is what I've been told to do, this is where I go to school to get it, this is the job I get, and I'm going to be here for 40 years. If you don't, and that's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying we have so much more that we can do that I kind of think it's one of those things where it's kind of better.
Yeah, no, I'm not necessarily arguing or saying that it's more difficult to make money mm-hmm. these days. It's obviously way easier. Like I could start selling random stuff on eBay from my house and make some money.
Yeah,
that's definitely it. But the difficult part is I don't know exactly what to sell. I gotta, you know what I mean? Like I don't know what next YouTube video is going to pop off and that sort of thing.
Then there's information age too, There's
tons more information now.
It's hard. That's right.
But the argument that I was trying to make was like, if you want this, here is the path, go for it. It's guaranteed.
Yeah.
That no longer exists.
I would say the way that you make money is easier. Mm-hmm. So like how to make money, that's always sort of difficult. And it might be more difficult now because you have to be creative. And because the people that are making money are probably out in front, and it might be just harder to catch up in some ways. But you don't have to make money by like breaking your back. But you were told what to do. You were told like do this, and then you're going to be able to do that.
Yep.
And it was more simple. And also our society shamed you if you didn't do that.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't go to college, like my uncle didn't go to college. He ended up being like. My uncle just has just kind of a great story because he he just like, I don't know, just seemed like pretty fortunate. Like he's a good communicator. He's a good people person and stuff like that. And so he was able to get a very, very successful job working for IBM, doing just about the same thing that my dad did. And my dad went the more traditional route. But my uncle was always just like, I don't really care. Like, he's just like, I don't know. He just thought things would work out. And then, like me. And they just did. And he was more like, he was more casual about it. But my dad was a little bit concerned, and he thought like, I need to do things by the book. Yeah. This is the way I was like taught to do stuff. I think the story with him is that his dad took him to college and basically said, don't come back without a degree type thing. And I don't know how true that is, but these are like the little, stories that you hear within your family. But I think the way that we used to make money may have been more difficult just because you didn't really have the opportunity to think about like, oh, what does Andrew like? What's Andrew? What are you interested in?
The luxury. I can do what I'm interested in.
Oh wow, I love audio. I love pictures. I've always liked podcasts, and then you can just ask for an opportunity to podcast, and here we are.
Yeah, or even like if you go to your workplace and like, hey, I just realized that if we do this instead of that, we're going to save like $100,000 a year, and then we're actually going to make way more profit. You do not think outside of the box. You do what you're told, and that's it.
Why do you have ideas?
Yeah, you're not allowed to. The fuck? What is this? This ain't a free world.
Do I pay you for ideas?
Yeah, no.
I pay you to type, bitch.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Flashbacks there.
I have a question for you guys too. Now we talked. You were talking a little bit about how like men don't usually like hug too much or say I love you that much, etc. Your parenting styles. How did you guys? How did you go about it? How are you going about it with your son? Like, are you being warmer? I'm not saying you need to cry to your kids, but what are you guys? How is it different from what the standard is?
Yeah, I'm trying to. I tell my son I love him every day. He's starting to say it back, and it's like the most amazing thing ever. So growing up, like we never said that ever. Heart just never happened. My mom and I maybe here and there. When my mom died, we started saying it a lot, which is unfortunately that it took that long, but something had to happen. I still am very like my wife is very affectionate. Everybody hugs in the family, like all that sort of thing. We never did that, so it's a very like contrast difference between the both ways that we grew up. So with my son, he definitely has that where he wants to like hug and he wants to like cuddle and do all these things. And I'm like, I'm trying, but then like, hey, we've kind of been all like in the same room all day long. Like, let me get a little bit of space here. Yeah. And then I get a little bit of space and kind of have to like recharge. I recharge like alone, right? That's my thing. Everyone else recharges together. And sometimes that is difficult. That's a really tricky thing where like somebody doesn't feel good. Let's get closer. As far as like maybe had a rough day, I'm a little tired, not necessarily sick. I just mean like emotional maybe. Yeah. Me, like, dude, like I'm frustrated at something. I need some peace. I need some quiet. I need a moment. But then it's like, oh no, let's hug, let's help.
Get away, bitch.
And I'm just like, look, I know this is tricky to understand, but like, I need to be alone. It's not you. It's not like there's nothing between us or anything like that. I just need some space. And then so with my son, he gets a little caught in the crossfire, like being totally honest, like where he like,
he's a Yeatum here sometimes.
No, but like, cause we'll say like, here, I'll hold you. So now when he wants to be held, he just comes, hold you. It's the cutest thing ever. But, and it's like, he heard it like 8,000 times in 1 hour. You're just like, fuck, okay. And so my wife is like the complete opposite of me when it comes to that stuff. Like, so I am like actively trying to get better at it. Yeah. And I'm trying to be way more affectionate than what I grew up with. So yeah, I tell my son I love him every day. Same thing with my daughter, same thing with my wife. And, we say it back to each other. But as far as like, I'm not crying in front of him, but I'm trying to be more aware of his emotions and stuff. Cause like I can tell when he's embarrassed. I can tell when just he's feeling something, and I'm just like, hey, dude, like it's cool. Like, I'll just talk to him, even though maybe the communication's not really like hitting, but I'm at least letting him know, like, hey, whatever you're feeling is totally fine. Yeah. Obviously, he's 3, so it's probably not hitting, but I'm just trying to get the reps in because, like what Mark said, like he's actually mentoring me. And so when it comes to like, oh, I'm not a patient person, like if I have a kid, they will teach you a lot about patience and they will teach you where your threshold is. But yeah, so I am trying to.
Does he do the I do it thing? I'll do it, all that stuff. Like he wants to buckle himself and seatbelt and all that shit.
Sometimes here and there.
Takes forever.
Yeah, no, the thing.
Let me just do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But they do need to like learn everything for themselves too, you know, like, or they want to carry a cup that they don't want the sippy cup anymore or whatever. It's just like,
give me the grown cup.
Yeah. You're like, oh my God.
His thing is just like saying, okay. So it's like, I gotta, whatever, like insert anything that he might want to do. And if you just mention it, he's okay. Like, that means like, yes, let's go do it right now. It's like, no, dude, that's not what I meant. Like, I just agreed to this verbal contract. Like, shit, like I have to fulfill my.
But I said okay.
Yeah.
Why? I said okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what that interaction is like.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah. I'm like, all right. So I'm trying is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I think in my house, like if you don't know that you're loved, then you're missing everything. Cause like we say it a lot, we show it a lot. My wife shows it more than she says it. I say it a lot. And, I think, for us, time is important. It's important to spend like time together, especially at the age that my kids are right now. I mean, it's always good to spend time with your kids, but I also think that there is a problem though with like being there too much and like loving on them a little bit too much, not giving them space, not allowing them to. You can't. I mean, you can parent your kid whatever way you want, but I don't think it's great to really helicopter and to Nerf world everything that they do. Like, I think it's good to let them smash themselves into some shit sometimes, even though you're watching, you're like, oh my God. Like, it used to like hurt my heart and like my stomach whenever like Jake would like fall or something. I was always just like, oh my God. And I just, over a while, I was just like, he's not really like, he's not getting hurt really. He's just like falling or stumbling or, I try to teach him not to, slam his finger in the door or whatever, you try to teach them these lessons, but they're still going to do all this stuff and they're still going to get hurt. So I just have always shared with my kids that, the way that we spell love in my family is TIME, just spending a lot of time with each other, I think is really, really critical. But I think so much of what Patrick Bet David is talking about and so much of what we see time and time again when we talk about these things in society that are maybe just different than the way they used to be, I think so often it comes back to parenting, and hopefully people don't always just want to have a kid because everyone else has a kid. Hopefully it's something they really, had an opportunity to really think about before they brought someone in this world. And even if they didn't have a great opportunity to think about it, hopefully after that they make decisions to, be the best parent that they can be. It's a very difficult and challenging thing. And I think that, something that all parents should know and understand, or people that are going to be parents at some point, is that it's best to involve kind of a lot of people. It takes they say it takes a village to raise a kid. It really does. So if you don't have any grandparents around, or you don't have aunts or uncles or family members, uncles, aunts, all that kind of stuff, then it's something you really want to try to probably consider to set your kids up the best that you possibly can. Because I think the more people that are involved and the more people that love on that kid and teach the kid different stuff in different ways, they'll get so many different perspectives.
Ready to keep going?
Point here. So maybe men today need stronger role models to challenge them and to show them it is okay to go through challenges. It is okay to have to fight through. This is a part of becoming a man's man, and it's natural. Next point is the walking on eggshells society that we're living in today. And what do I mean by walking on eggshells? People are afraid of offending today, okay? So when you're afraid of offending, you don't want to share your opinion, and the way people learn who you really are is by sharing your opinion and feelings about different issues. Now, in our family, I talk about 4 things with my boys. We lead, we respect, we improve, we love. Respect, let's talk about that. If you constantly spend your life...
I don't disagree with him on this. I think some people, when they feel the need, or they're like, oh yeah, people aren't opinionated or they don't honestly share their perspectives. I think some people take that and then they just become emboldened to say whatever type of bullshit that they want because it's their opinion. It just brings me back to this thing again. I saw it from this guy Ryan Mickler, and I'm mentioning him because he's like a leader of men online, and I don't necessarily have a problem with him. But he had this post again about the boxer Imani Khalif, and the reason why that specific thing was so interesting to me is because in his post he literally said, if you're a man and you don't think this is like, by the way, when it first came out with like not the craziest amount of information. If you're a man and you think that this is okay and you're not stringently against this, you're not a man, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, dude, I get it. This whole XY thing, that's and everyone that was commenting back to this guy about his opinion, he was like XY chromosomes, blah, blah, which this isn't about that, but this is more so about the idea of like, you must have a strong opinion and take a stand and put your flagpole somewhere. And if you don't, then you're a fence-sitting pussy man?
Yeah.
Right? Fence-sitting pussy man? Yeah.
Vagina man.
And a fence-sitting vagina man. And so I don't think it's bad to have opinions and be emboldened, but also I see so many people that just, it's like they want to have a strong opinion so that everyone sees that they have a strong opinion, even if it's misinformed or potentially extremely fucking offensive.
I agree with some of what you're saying right now. Is I think that sometimes the strong opinion can be like a meme, right? Like it could be pushed forward more aggressively. Like that's how you get on Joe Rogan, right? If you're a lot of the people he's had on are like very opinionated, and there are reasonable people that people can look up to that are really popular, but the reasonable guy, the guy who's like a little bit more in the middle, who's going to kind of call it more down the middle, you're not going to, sometimes you see them get really popular, but in most cases, I think people want to get flamed up from like the guy saying, something that did offend them, or it's something that they're supporting and they're getting all fired up because they share a similar opinion.
I want to add this in because the offensive thing, right? Because he was like, people are afraid of offending people. And I don't think it's wrong to offend people. But at the same time, it's like, can we put these things forward, but also just kind of be aware of other people, aware of like the ideas that are being put forward. And if you do offend people, that's fine. You can have strong views that offend people, but then let's talk about why you're offended. Because again, it brings me back to this idea of like, I'm coming back to this post thing. You realize that you could have been calling somebody a man who's never been called a man in their entire life. And you're doing this on a platform with whatever, hundreds of thousands of people who are now also going to call this person a man. Do you not realize how, again, I get it. People are on social media. If people get popular, whatever comes their way. But the whole time with that specific situation, I was just like, this person that was born a woman grows up, does her sport, blah, blah, blah. And now millions of people are online saying that's a fucking man. Look at that face. Look at that manly fucking face. I'm just like, Jesus Christ. People don't even, you can have your opinion, but can we just be a bit more tactful with it? Like, can we be courteous as human beings? Because no matter what, this is another person.
I think it's unfair because this person is exceptionally stronger than the other person. You like kind of leave it there more, right? Rather than like
then being accusatory, saying this man is doing this on purpose. Like it's just it's unnecessarily mean, and I don't think it's bad to be mean. I'm not saying people can't be mean and people can't offend, but it seems like a lot of people in the conquest of putting their ideas forward, they just want, it's like they just want to be an asshole. And for some people you can be an asshole all you want, but like, damn. Like,
yeah, like I think, you should be able to speak your mind, and if it offends somebody, that's okay. But I don't think you should like go out of your way to be offensive. Then that's like a whole different thing. Then just like you said, like then you're just being an asshole.
You're just being a dick.
And you're getting some likes and some shares. Like that's just being a dick.
I think it's tough too because like someone like Patrick Bet-David is super smart, and some of the other words that he talked about, like that he shares with his family and shares with his kids, like one of the number one things he talked about was respect. Respect and love. And so, if you're coming from a place of respect and love, obviously amongst family members, it might be different than the way you treat everybody else, but it should be probably pretty similar, and if he's a guy that I'm sure, I don't know him. My brother's actually going to interview him for his movie.
Sick.
Coming up. So I think that's a really cool opportunity. And I'm a huge fan of Patrick Bet-David. But I think sometimes when we try to apply like a lot of different like logic or rules to like a mass of people, people are just so different. And not everybody has ever really had a dad like Patrick Bet-David that's teaching in the household about these ideas of love and respect and how you should be able to strongly share your own opinion and you should be okay. And if you do so in a respectful way, hopefully that kind of covers your bases. You know, I don't think, and he did mention tiptoe. He's like, he doesn't really love that you have to tiptoe. You should be able to tell people certain things. You'd be able to say, like, hey, the other day when you said this to me, like that wasn't cool. I thought about it a little bit more. I had to, you know, it didn't really register, but I just wanted, we're friends. We all care about each other. And that really bothered me. You should be able to say that without all of a sudden being like, what the fuck did you say, bro?
Motherfucker, what? Yeah. And I think the flip side is, I don't know, it's worse or better, whatever. But like when I'm making a post or something, I will also like, let me reread this, make sure I don't offend anybody. I don't think if you get offended, that's the green light to just go fucking bonkers and start creating like a bunch of like hate speech towards the person that gave you a whatever, hurt your feelings a little bit. Like you should be able to come back with, or maybe not come back, just fucking unfollowed, whatever, keep moving on. But unfortunately, if I'll comment on some of your posts, whatever it may be, and it's like people go fucking nuts, and I'm like, I'm gonna just stop commenting on posts because no matter what I say, no matter if I'm trying to be silly, give advice, or just whatever, somebody always has some dumb shit to say, and I'm like, dude, you totally missed the point of all of this.
That's actually a really interesting point. I've been censored in a way, you know, like I'll go to say something on someone else's post and I'm like, they don't really understand that like I'm friends with the person. I'm trying to make a dumb dad joke probably. I probably shouldn't say it anyway. Therefore, I'll just like won't even leave it, you know? So it is interesting. And I think it's some of what Patrick Bet-David's talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, I want to clarify. I don't think there's anything wrong with offending people. Your views, if you have views on something, it's going to offend somebody, and a conversation can start from there. But like, you don't have to be a dick while doing it. But if you choose to be a dick while doing it, it's a free country. Be a dick if you want to be a dick. Whatever.
It takes intelligence to not be a dick about it. You know, sometimes when you're being like really, because like there's certain opinions that would just. There's certain opinions that would really just bug people. Mm-hmm. Like if you shared your stance on abortion, even if you explained yourself, you know, they'd be like, I never saw that from you, man. I can't even believe it. I'm going to not follow you anymore. And that disgusts me or whatever. You're like, whoa, that escalated quickly. I have this opinion. You have that one. I don't know why. We can't. You should be able to have that opinion. I should be able to have this one, and we should be able to exist with no problem. But it doesn't always work that way.
But your opinion's wrong.
Exactly.
So that's why.
And now your opinion is just who you are. That's your whole personality.
Yeah, you can't detach that. R. Kelly's music and R. Kelly. You should be able to detach the two.
I don't like pissing on young kids.
Me
but
neither.
I mean, I like ignition,
dude. You remind me of my G. All right, let's go.
Like disrespecting people, you're eventually going to be alone and not successful in business because it doesn't work out if you want to disrespect everybody. People are not going to stick around in a work environment if you're disrespecting them. People are not going to be with you friendship-wise if you're constantly disrespecting them and judging them. And quite frankly, you're going to be by yourself. Now, offending is a different story. Today, they're trying very, very hard to cause men to be careful with their thoughts and what they say. And God forbid you say something that's going to offend somebody, you're walking on eggshells.
Pause.
I don't know.
Because it's cool. He got to that disrespect. Like, I'm just curious what he's going to say next. But do you think people should be careful with like, what do you guys think about that? Because like, in essence, I do think you should be careful about how you put things forward. I don't think you should just put everything you put forward based off of how you feel, you just put that forward like that's my raw truth. You should audit that a little bit, is my opinion. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think if you are open to discussions and you're open to like just literally just thinking, the way you present information will kind of show that, right? So like if I say, I don't know, if I don't want to hear any argument that jiu-jitsu doesn't work in the street, the way I speak about that we'll just be talking shit about like judo. We'll be talking shit about like all these other whatever martial arts and stuff. And somebody will come at me and be like, actually, if you just like box somebody up, like you won't be able to take whatever it may be, or a wrestler comes and takes you down. What are you going to do? Like, you're not going to pull guard on the street. Then like that will just cause a lot of friction during that conversation. So I think if you're just like, I don't know, more laid back like us, when somebody does say something, I think you're just like, okay, like it's an opinion or whatever. You know, does that make sense?
I get what you're saying.
One of the coolest things I've learned is just at the end of a sentence to use a question mark instead of a period, because a question mark is a question and a period means it's a statement. And so if I just come from the place of asking a question, even if the question is sort of rude, or if the question's like, hey man, I don't understand, you know, or I don't understand why people have a hard time working out 4 days a week. Then you just reframe that a little bit and say, I really love working out. Why do you guys think it's so hard for people to train 4 days a week? Like, they still could be offended by that. They could be like, well, Mark, you don't have a job. They could do all that stuff that they always do, right? Which is true. They can still do all that stuff that they normally do, but it is a question. And so I think asking questions and trying to get people to communicate back and forth, I think can be really valuable. I do think that there's certain people that are just sort of screwed. It's going to be very difficult for them to really say anything. And so I think, you know, a guy like The Rock, it's like he's got to stick to his pancakes and his cheat meals and his like, it's just difficult. Like, it's just got to be, it's got to be hard, you know? Even something like he buys a truck for his mom or something. It's like, oh, I looked that truck up. It's 55 grand. Like, why didn't you buy, you know what I mean? Like, it's just there's scrutiny like everywhere. So I think it's hard for some of those people. I also think that it's our job as individuals to be careful. Like, don't put people on such a pedestal, you know, and in that way you can't really be as disappointed in something that they say. If Alex Hormozy makes a political statement, he's not talking about money, or he's not talking about his giant calves. You don't have to be offended by it because you chose to not necessarily, for finances, you're like, he's a great resource, right? But then for everything else, I would just say that, like, if we put these people up on a pedestal, then we're most likely going to be kind of disappointed because they're not always going to have the same opinion as us.
You're trying to get healthier and you're probably eating chicken for every meal or the same beef cuts for every meal. And trust me, I know how good some cuts can be. You can make anything taste good, but Good Life Protein is the place that you want to go if you want to start adding some different types of meats into your rotation. They got picanha, they got chorizo sausage, which is still great on the macros because they're using Piedmontese beef. They have lobster. They have all different types of fish. They have actually a bunch of different types of chicken too. They have lamb. I'm telling you, if you give it Good Life a shot and try some of their different meats, which are still great on the macros, you'll start to appreciate the things that you can get from different meat. Don't think too hard about that one. But check out Good Life because we're sure that you're going to love the taste and the quality. And it's good for your health. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at goodlifeproteins.com. And at checkout, enter promo code POWER to save 20% off your entire order. Or if you want to save even more, use promo code POWERPROJECT to save an additional 5% off your build box. Again, goodlifeproteins.com. Link is in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
You know, I found something helpful. When I was in my early 20s, I consumed a lot of Tim Ferriss content and books and stuff. And there's this one thing I read that he mentioned. He probably got it from someone else, but he mentioned this idea of strong views loosely held. And it's that idea that, like, if you have strong views, continue to, like, believe those things and even try to find more evidence for it if you truly believe in that. But also, if something comes across your way that puts a big hole in your belief system potentially, and it's legitimate, maybe be open enough to examine that rather than kick it away. Because a lot of people, when they hear something that is different from what they do or kind of overturns the whole idea of the way they think about something, they kind of just ignore it and continue down with their, and if that's what you choose to do, okay. But a lot of the times you can actually grow by allowing yourself to intake this thing that might be different. And maybe you might find that there's some gold nugget here, or maybe it does put a hole in everything you've thought for a long time and you shift. But that's better. Why wouldn't you seek something better if it's right there, right?
That happened to me with lifting. Like when people started benching, squatting, and deadlifting so often, I was like, oh my God, all these people are going to get completely wrecked. And then really all that happened was like most of them, a couple of people got wrecked, but for the most part, people just got really, really strong and records started falling left and right. And I'm like, I didn't know that you could bench, squat, and deadlift multiple times a week like that. Like some of them doing like 3-4 days a week, pretty heavy. I was like, I'm like, there's no way in hell I'd ever even try that. I'm like, that seems ridiculous. And I didn't stick around long enough to try it. Thank God. It seemed like it was brutal, but it worked great. And there's a lot of people still utilizing, and Lane Norton is still getting PRs. And there's other lifters that utilize that same. I think Jesus Oliveras is just like, he just keeps getting stronger somehow, which I don't really know how it's
You can
possible.
still touch the rim
Yeah, dunking and stuff like, or I don't know if he dunked, but he touching the rim on a basketball hoop.
and landed like a ninja at 400 pounds.
That's what I noticed when he landed. I was like, wow, that was like a quiet, like fucking good landing. Yeah, seemed springy.
Yeah.
Just wait.
You know, many leaders that I call leaders who walk on eggshells that are not comfortable sharing their thoughts on different issues. They share their thoughts, but they get better at their soft skills to know how to deliver their messages better. That's something you're going to get better at for the rest of your life. But walking on eggshell society where you're sitting there by yourself, not really sharing your thoughts, it's as if you don't exist. You're non-existent. And that's just not what men's...
You know, I think sharing your opinion, I think is great, but also like not saying anything sometimes I think is awesome as well. You know, I've I have friends that make a lot of money, that have big businesses, and they're not like forward facing. So you don't really ever hear their opinions. You don't hear them really say anything about anything, you know. But for me, there's potential to where I could hurt my own business or hurt some things simply by making a political statement, or it doesn't necessarily seem like it impacts me from a financial perspective, but it does change my my Instagram for sure. Like my Instagram just like went down like 20, 30,000, you know, just from like some recent stuff that I did. But I don't really care that much about that. But that also just, it's probably in my best interest just to not share certain opinions, since I can't seem to communicate to people in a way that is allowing them to see my point of view in any productive way. Like literally all it does is kind of make them mad. And
you can't add context in anything short. It's literally just like this, right?
Yeah, it's just like that. Yeah. And so even, stuff like that, like for the people that Patrick Bet David probably knows, he's supposedly worth like $500 million, and he's in a network of people that are really high level. Not everyone's going to be like Dana White. You know, not Dana White's like, fuck this, fuck you, fuck everybody. I'm doing things this way. He has things set up really well to where he can be that way. But there's other people that have businesses, and they also have a lot of other people that have invested in that business. And it's just not smart. It's just flat out not smart for them to overly communicate on their opinions all the time on a public forum. You know,
I don't know. This is so interesting. I think it's tough because some people just want somebody to just share their raw things. And I even take this, when I hear something like that, I go into the way I communicate with my girlfriend, right? Because we'll be having a conversation about something that we vehemently disagree with. But when I put things forward to her, you know, she'll clearly understand what I'm saying, but I'm not just going to, I'm going to be aware of the way that she's going to view it. And I'm going to deliver it in a way that she can hear what I'm saying, and have a fruitful conversation, because there's ways to have conversation where you can purposefully make it combative. A lot of people do that in debate. A lot of people do that with political stuff. And that's okay if your intention is to potentially have a combative type of conversation with somebody.
Just if you're frustrated.
If you're frustrated, of course, right? But like, I don't know. It's one of those things where I think in some situations it's beneficial to converse like that. For example, our conversation with functional patterns. I came at them with the things that I disagreed with, but I delivered that message to them in a way that they didn't have to feel like they had their guard up, but they were disarmed a little bit, right? Because I was actually open to hearing what they had to say, and they heard the disagreements. But I could have come at it like, you guys are weak, you're twigs. I don't think I think you're missing a lot of stuff in your system, which is why I could have come at it in a way that was like, oh, that's the way you feel. But where would that have led us? Would that have led us to understanding anything about what the person's trying to do, or would that have just made them defensive and they'd want to fight back?
I would say you guys have great genetics and you're both on steroids. And they would just be closed off to anything else.
I'm not saying that's what I think necessarily, but I'm saying like that's what a lot of people would do. Fuck you, you're weak, this, that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't think having the conversation go the way it did makes you weak. Right, because you're still able to convey the message. You're still able to stand your ground without being offensive again, without causing that confrontation. And so I think what Patrick Bet David was just saying, he said something along the lines of like, that's not allowing you to be the man you're supposed to be. But it's like, well, man, what an amazing skill in negotiating and all these other things if you can still hold your ground without making somebody else go on the like hardcore defensive side and shut you down. So, I don't know. I think I would just disagree with that.
Yeah. But I like this thing. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's beneficial. Depends on the situation. Right. But if you're able to have a conversation with someone and you don't have to make the alarms in their head ring, but you're still able to deliver what you want to deliver.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a good skill to have. And he mentioned that that's a soft skill that people develop. Right. So it's. Yeah,
I know at this point we're very deep into this conversation. We'll be chatting for a long time, but I think that it'd be a mistake not to mention this, that we're aware. Like we're aware of the time that we're in, and we're aware of what people say. Especially at my age, I hear people just sounding old. And what the old people are going to sound like is they're going to say, I don't understand why these fucking kids have anxiety. They have nothing to have anxiety about. They have everything at their fingertips. And what are they? They're just worried about like a post that someone else made or, and so people, they jump to conclusions. They don't really know anything about anxiety. They never really looked into it. They don't really understand. Like we're in a time where, generations before us have made things easier and they have made things more cushy, but maybe because of that, we're in a place where people have extra time and maybe they have, maybe they're consuming too much stuff on social media. Who knows all the causes of anxiety? There's so many things that can go into it. There could be genetics involved. There could be just the brain chemistry. But the simple fact is that a lot of people suffer from that and people just want to like, be like, oh, what a bitch this person is, or what, and they don't think it's real, but it's real. I've seen it from people before, seen it from people I love, people I care about, people that are family members. I don't know why it happens. The person that has the anxiety doesn't know why it happens. We can have some ideas on why it might happen. Yes, playing outside and doing all this other stuff, like those could all be great things. We've learned some things about a keto diet that could play into that could potentially help some of these people. But there's certain things that happen where I think older people, they just kind of put their hands up and like, I can't believe this. And they don't have anything to help with the problem. They just like put their hands up. These kids these days, I can't believe it, or millennials or whatever they want to like bitch and complain about. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, this purple-haired person at the coffee shop, they got my thing wrong. And it's like, that happens all the time. It doesn't matter the fucking person in purple hair.
Had this Oriental at the coffee quack. Why did he just put that fucking...
Exactly.
Oh, holy. All right, let's roll.
Men do. The next thing I want to talk to you about is competition. Society wants to convince you that competition is not healthy for you. By the way, the same people that are selling you that are those who lost, who didn't know how to handle it. The reality of it is, socialist boys have limited options. Capitalist men have unlimited options in every aspect of their life. Where they live, where they travel to, where they eat, who they date, anything you want. They have an unlimited supply of options. And unfortunately, those who don't compete don't like the fact that you have more options. When I was 14 years old, I was playing in this basketball association for troubled teenagers. I'm in a league with Mara Salvatrucha, with Black Diamonds, with, the Sureños, 18, with the Blood Crip, all these guys. And one day we're in this tournament and only 5 of our players showed up and we played against a team that had a full lineup and we lost by 104 points. They gave us this trophy that my dad has till today, a last place trophy. And he puts it right there and he says, you know why we have this trophy? To remind you how bad you lost. It's almost like, experience the pain, son. And I'm like, dude, throw that thing away. He says, no, you lost by 104 points. Look at the psyche of a father. A mother would say, why would you do that to him? That hurts his feeling. My dad's like, that's exactly what he needs. The pain of a loss makes a man come back and improve. Makes him stay up late at night practicing while everybody else is sleeping. Makes this guy say, one day I'm going to prove to the world that I'm a winner. So, going back to you, there's nothing wrong with competing. There's nothing wrong with losing. As long as you keep showing up and competing, eventually you're going to get your shot. But you're better off being a capitalist than being a socialist.
True.
Yeah, I would say learning how to lose is an essential skill, right? And you can always tell which kids don't know how to lose by how when they actually win, how they rub it in everybody's face, and it literally is the first time they've ever been there. But when you lose and you realize, like, being on the other side and all the shit that you have to go through, you win with class, right? And I think
You can also lose without having to give a bunch of excuses.
What do you mean?
Like, when a lot of people, when they lose, there's
Oh,
like
yeah.
all
Oh,
these
sorry. Yeah, yeah,
excuses,
yeah.
this plethora of excuses and all these imaginary things as to why they lost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Because being a socialist is just not attractive. Final thoughts here. Look, as you're going through the process from being a boy to a man, or from a man to a man's man, many times you're by yourself. Say you don't have a father figure. Say you don't have a strong male role model. You don't know who to talk to. You're trying to please everybody. Your mom's telling you, well, that's not the way to behave. And you don't have another man to bounce off the idea to think if it's a good idea or not. You're like, okay, I'm going to please my mom. I'm going to please my teacher, who's a woman. I'm going to please my girl, who's a female. I'm going to please my, girlfriend's mom. You're trying to please everybody, and you're becoming less and less and less of a man. And you're in the car by yourself saying, man, I'm losing my identity. I don't even know who I am. Then you lean towards making bad decisions. Look, take a time out away from everybody and sit down and say, what do I stand for? What are your values and principles? What do you stand for as a man? What do you want to do with your life? What kind of a leader you want to be in your life? You. Who do you want to be? Not what everybody's trying to force you to become. Who do you want to be? Then go solve for that. And when you do that, be prepared for some people to not like it. That includes a lot of women in your life. Makes sense? And then all of a sudden you're going to be like, oh my God, I'm finding more men like myself out there. Fantastic. They're out there. They're everywhere.
doing high knees.
You can find them. Just like yourself. You are not the only one that's thinking what you're thinking right now. But you want to be a man's man. The world gives you more opportunities when you do so. We are living in a very, very competitive environment. So if you got value from this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the...
Boys being boys. Be a man's man.
Yeah.
Nah, that was a great video.
That was really good.
I think people like Bedros Keuilian, right? They have these programs, and you see them like torturing these guys and having them, you know, crawl up a hill backwards, bear crawl with a weighted vest on. And there's obviously like some sort of need for, because Bedros Keuilian's not the only person that has these adventures or whatever you want to call them that these guys do. And there's these like, I mean, I've never seen it before. These like men's groups where guys go and they do activities and they do stuff that's difficult together for a couple days in a row type thing. And I think that there must be a reason why those things exist. There must be people that are like seeking some of that out for some particular reason. Maybe people are kind of thinking, if I can get in touch with my inner David Goggins, maybe that can help change me and help, you know, make me better. The idea of like men being less manly, especially if you think about like from 30 years ago, you know, I guess we would need like definitions, what's manly and so on. But I would say that people probably from the past in general are tougher for multiple reasons. And the further that you go back, you got to just admit that they're tougher and tougher and tougher. Yeah. We could probably argue about like 2000s and the 90s and the 80s and 70s, and we can kind of like go back and forth on some shit like that. But if we go back like a few hundred years, like I don't have any survival skills at all. So like I don't know. I mean, I guess like I have some fitness, so I could like do okay with like walking long distances and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know how to hunt. I kind of halfway know how to fish, so I guess I could figure out something with that. But you know what I mean? Like, years and years and years ago, or hundreds of years ago, nowadays everything's temperature controlled. We walk into here, we got air conditioning, we got heat, we have that in our cars, we have that every single place you travel to, the grocery store and so on. I was just even thinking of I was drinking some cold water after a workout yesterday. And I was like, where would you get really cold water? 700 years ago.
Ice cold beverage.
Yeah, ice cold beverage. I mean, if it was 95 degrees outside, the water was probably pretty warm, and you didn't get that same kind of hit that you get from, drinking out of one of these ice shaker things or whatever.
Probably
right?
a little bit dirty.
So there's, exactly, a little dirt, get the little microbes on you. But yeah, I mean, I think that men probably used to be tougher and maybe used to be a little bit more manly, but I don't really know how good that is. And I think that's something that I guess people have to have their kind of own interpretation of.
One thing is if that I mean, I think the case is that yes, there probably were much more manly men in the early 1900s and 1800s, et cetera. But you actually had to be harder to survive in those times. Like the amount of just random killings that would happen, robberies, whole families just destroyed and all their stuff taken, and no one would be able to find out who did it. You just had to be able to survive more. Whereas now, there is more literal security. There's all these things that make life a bit less worrisome, right? For you, for your safety, for the safety of your family, et cetera. That is just the one type of man that would have had to survive really well back then. Now there are many type of men, and men that didn't automatically fit that stereotype, right? That was around them of being the masculine man. If they feel like they want to do some stuff in fashion, well, they have the ability to. If they want to play games, they have the ability to. If they can literally do whatever they want because the times. The times don't call for them to have to be a masculine man.
Yeah.
But if that is in you though, if you feel like I want to do masculine things, you have the choice to develop that spectrum of your personality and physical and mental acuity. You can do that.
Yeah, it's a man's need to seek advancements. That's kind of almost screwing things up, I guess, right? Because all these advancements that you just talked about is making it a little more convenient for us to sit down and play Call of Duty or whatever. But one thing I was just thinking about right now, I was talking to Owen because we both just happened to get cameras at the same time. But I don't know if maybe because we're so close to it, this is really looking at it under a microscope because it's only a short period of time. But when I was editing the way he was, I had to transfer footage via tape, right? I had to ingest footage. So if I shot for 3 hours, it took me 3 hours to get that footage into the computer. So now am I going to look at him and be like, oh, you guys have it so easy. What are you talking about? You don't have to do this and that. So it's sort of if my dad's like, oh, you have it so easy, you can just sell stuff online or whatever. Then now I can turn around at him and be like, oh, it's so easy. You have 4K footage built in and all this other stuff. You can shoot at 24 frames. Oh my God, I had to de-interlace my footage and do all this other shit. And he's just like, I don't even know what that means. And it's interesting that it's never going to stop because even in my short career of content creation, just a little bit over 13 years now, it's still yeah, it was completely different 13 years ago, right? It's insanely different, and it's only been 13 years. It's never going to stop, and we're never going to be the generation that's no, actually, the younger people do have it harder. It's never going to stop. That sucks.
I think, there's a lot of parents and a lot of men that could teach their children to be a man, to be more manly, or get their child around male figures. But trying to define it or trying to figure out what any of that means, I think is really difficult to figure out. So I think it's something that is caught and not taught. So I think when people are thinking about this topic, if you're someone that thinks that things have to change with this, when you have your own child, there's your opportunity to turn your boy into the manliest man ever. Strength is never a weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.